I Own It will give you a front row seat to the positioning, bold moves, and sometimes the dog-eat-dog negotiations that go on behind the scenes of the deals that break the norms, set the precedent, and become the case study we devour as we harnessed our craft. Welcome to the season. Leverage. You got it or you don't. Welcome to the show. Lee Benson, thank you for hosting us today. We're in this incredible studio and office that you're hosting us. I'm really grateful. What is leverage?
Yeah, to me, it's having a position of advantage, right? And how you think about leverage and what you do with that, I think, is really critical to current success and long-term success.
When was the first time you experienced leverage?
Well, I think we do it as kids, but if I go all the way through, let's go to the 80s. In the 1980s, I played over 1,000 nights on stages, playing guitar, singing. It's how I made most of my money back then. Well, if we had a bigger following, we had more leverage to get the gigs in the clubs that we wanted, right? That's a pretty simple example of it, right? And then fast forward, so I'm on my 7th company. I've started from scratch. I think I'm starting another one here in a few months. It's not about the number, it's about the fun, it's about creating value in the world. But I had an aerospace company, and around 2000 we were sued by a very large OEM, original equipment manufacturer, and they didn't really give me a choice. We repaired aircraft parts to safely reduce aircraft operating costs for helicopter and fixed wing operators around the world. And if we repaired something, maybe the new part's $10 or $20 or $50,000, for less than 20% of a new part, they could safely return that part to service and be mission ready. Well, the OEM wanted us not to repair the part so they could sell new parts. Makes sense, right? We're all playing this game of who gets to keep all the money. But we are fully within our right to do that. The FAA allows us to do it, the regulations allow us to do it, but it didn't matter. They went after us anyway. And you could say that this multi-billion-dollar company had huge leverage over us. They could have an endless, at the time I think we had an $8 or $10 million business, but endless legal fund to fight us. So what do we really do? And I thought at the time, but they just went after us and said, stop doing these 3 things. I probably would have, because it's a pretty big unknown stepping into that legal battlefield. But they went after everything, wanted to shut the business down. Just went after us hard. And I get why they did it, so they could sell new parts and put us out of business. It wasn't right. We were fully within our legal right to do it. But because I had no choice, it's like, okay, let's go. And I believed I actually had, and it probably took me a week to get my head around this, but I had the leverage because we were focusing on what the customers really wanted. And at the time, the OEM wasn't focusing on what the customers really wanted and needed. And I knew that they would be by our side. So after about a year, we won the case, and our customers rewarded us by 4 or 5-folding our business over the next 4 or 5 years. Because we preserve their right to safely reduce aircraft operating costs. So, this really goes to mindset. I think everybody has way more leverage than they believe they do. Like significantly more when you look at all the dots you can connect in your life, your contacts, the resources you have, all of that.
If you create the value, you create the leverage. Take a step back and look at all your resources. What are you not using? So there's a way to look at it, even though you might think that the other party has more leverage on you. You could utilize your knowledge, resources, and experience to realize that maybe they don't have as much leverage as you think.
Yeah, well, especially in a business context, if you've got the customers fully on your side because you're doing what's right, you're connected, continually improving, continually creating more value for them, you've got the leverage over most large companies because they don't typically do a very good job of that. Some of them do, but a lot of them really don't. And I guess to your point in the question, how many of us really step back and look at everything on the playing field, take our head up high and see what dots we can connect to make better decisions that drive better outcomes. We all are more than we know. We can accomplish more than we know we can. I think it's actually unknowable. But if you just step back and think about everything you have access to, all your resources, how can you leverage that? You have more than you think you do. I've never seen that be less than somebody thinks they do.
Looking back at that experience and other experiences, how have you implemented those lessons to use leverage as you've moved forward in your business and even in life?
So this one here is a bit of that I just described is a bit of a struggle, right? Mm-hmm. And it would freak a lot of people completely out. You know, you've got this giant company coming after you and. Right. And all this stuff going on, but it was one of the best lessons I've ever learned. So here's a year, 80% of my time managing 3 different law firms and going through all this, making sure all of my team members, 150-ish employees, maybe 200 at the time, weren't paying attention to it at all. That was my job. I'm going to take the full brunt of this. They're going to do their job for our customers. And now when people talk about being sued and this going on, like all these intimidating letters that people get from a lawyer, it's like, whatever, it's all just this big game. And a lot of times, unfortunately in business, it's about win-lose. Now sometimes people do bad things and they should be sued and put in their place. But a lot of times it's just a game of who gets to keep all the money with win-lose leverage tactics because they can, not because it's right to create more value in the world.
Let's talk about the right number, like in your book, one of your books. Mm-hmm. Is understanding the right numbers, can that create leverage in business?
Well, it certainly can create focus, and then it allows an organization to create more value faster, accelerate that over time. So that totally gives you leverage. In the book you're talking about is titled Your Most Important Number, and it says every organization of any type or size, let's go whether for-profit or nonprofit, and I would argue even government, there's one number that says above all others, you're winning or losing the game. It represents the value of the organization, and very importantly, it will drive the majority of the right behaviors. So if everybody's focused in the for-profit space on net profit or EBITDA or cash flow if you're capital intensive, the CEO's job, the founder's job is to, in my opinion, philosophically, is to continually increase the value of the organization. That's it. So by proxy, the senior team is to do the same thing. Now, they all have that most important number, and by each function in the organization, they also have a most important number that represents the value they create and will drive the majority of the right behaviors. Very important to get both right. There might be a scoreboard, and there always typically is, but we're only measuring other things to make better decisions to improve our most important number. Then I want to know what's the best work you're doing as a team, everyone on that team, to improve your most important number. Where did you start? Where are you going? At any point in time, are you on track, at risk, behind, overdriving? And if I can see all of that and everybody's fully aligned, that's better than 97% of companies out there. So yeah, it gives you a huge competitive advantage in the leverage that you're talking about.
And so let's talk about childhood struggles. All of us go through it. Mm-hmm. And how can you use your childhood struggles, and for someone listening out there, to use that as leverage for you to move forward in life, in business, personal relationships?
The question I always think about, and I'm mostly obviously kidding here, but how come you don't get stronger and more flexible the less you go to the gym? Right. If you don't work out, how come it's not getting better? So why do we think that's going to help kids by not struggling, they're somehow going to be better in the world? And I hear, friends of mine that I just love who they are, like the person he or she became, and how they look at the world and all of it. And they'll tell me, a lot of them, I don't want my kids to struggle like I did. I said, what are you talking about? Look how you turned out. It's incredible. I struggled a lot as a kid, mostly very healthy struggles. So what? I wouldn't change anything, but imagine the game. I wish I could go back and change that. Mm-hmm. You'd get here and you'd do the same thing over and again. There's no end to it, right? So you couldn't be who you are without it. So it makes no sense. So with the best of intentions, we're getting rid of all struggles for kids. Even unhealthy struggles can be leveraged to create more value in the world. So when I think about kids, and I'm spending a lot of time on this, and wrote another book with my friend Scott Donnell, my co-author, titled Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. So if we work backwards from what's an ideal high school senior being launched into adulthood look like? What is that, you know? And it's for every parent to figure out and decide. But I think about it, well, I want them to be self-reliant, financially competent, financially independent if they choose to be like I was. They can think critically, and they're all about creating value in the world and holistic value. So it's material value creation, which seems to be where everybody gets stuck. Super important. We want to cultivate the ability to create, you know, more money things or whatever to support a lifestyle, support causes, etc. But emotional energy value creation within ourselves and how we infect others with that in a positive way, in my view, it's the scarcest commodity on the planet. And then the third bucket, and there's so much in each of these three buckets, the third bucket is spiritual value creation. In the context of an organization, it's connected to something bigger, our community, what's going on. So we're launching kids in the world that if they have these characteristics, they're intrinsically motivated. They're not extrinsically motivated, waiting for, you know, to be part of a club or somebody to give them a bunch of likes or whatever the heck it is. Just go out there and create value in the world, and no matter what hits them, they're so much more resilient around that. So if we could work backwards from that and then design the struggles, and if you get the book, Value Creation Kid, there's all these examples in there of little struggles that kids go through. You need to learn to make your bed. What's the right way to do that? When you meet somebody, how do you shake their hand? Do you look them in the eye going forward? You brush your teeth, you make your bed. And there's something in there we call the gravy stack method. So there's 4 pieces. There's value creation, how you talk about it in the household. There's house rules, there's financial competency, and there's healthy struggle. On the house rules side, there's 3 E's. There's expectations. So as you get older, your job changes for the family, right? And then there's expenses. What expenses do the kids start picking up at what age going forward? And some of the parents at a certain age have started, and the book came out last year, we're already in just about 4,000 families. I believe we're going to be in 2 million families within the next 5 years. But some parents are sharing stories with us where they're having the kids pay for cavities because they're not going to be responsible and brush their teeth. That's on you. You actually have to do it. And then there's extra money. Well, let's give them an opportunity to earn extra money in the right way. It's not an allowance. It's earning money doing a thing like washing the car at a competitive rate, like I could get it done down the street, et cetera, at a car wash. So you've got all that, and now financial competency. I don't care that they're literate. I care that they're competent, that they can actually apply that stuff, they can manage it, they understand what saving and spending and sharing and investing and all those things mean. And then the last piece, the most important part that parents are missing is the struggle part. Like, let's have them, like, if we could design the struggle intentionally, working backwards from this amazing human you're launching into adulthood, what a cool process to go through. And you know what? You're with the kids, we love you, that's never going to be a question, but I'm okay with you bouncing off the walls right now because you don't want to struggle, because you're going to come out the other side of this and it's going to be better. Now, fast forward into adulthood, and so many adults, when it gets a little bit hard, they act like little whiny victims, right? It's crazy. And friends that I have with businesses, when the world doesn't just lay out perfectly, they act like victims. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Sure.
And I'm like, dude, this is the highest level leadership work you can be doing, is fixing a mess or getting through a challenging time. And if you think about it that way, go through it enough times, like struggle to get a capability, build confidence, use it to create value. You do it enough times, you actually learn to trust the struggle.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what you're saying is you really need to endure pain when you're a child and going into your teenage years and becoming a young adult, because that's what teaches you the lessons in life to use leverage and to use the ability to push forward through failure.
Yeah, the most, in terms of business, the most traumatic experience was the one that I explained. Mm-hmm. And what did that do for me? That struggle made everything else easy going forward, like literally everything else. So it makes us more resilient. You know, I think about a capability I want. So in that scenario, I want to be really good at managing something like this. You try managing 3 law firms and see how easy or hard that is going through it, and then managing what's going on the other side coming after you, managing the employees, managing what's going on with the customers, continually improving the service, and do all of that. intensely for a year. I don't think I worked less than 80 hours a week that year, but look at the capability I got. It's not about multitasking, but I could have a lot of things going on and have most of them going pretty well through that. So I had to win. There was no choice. And I guess another piece we could talk about here is, a lot of companies, the business owners start out, they think they have to have money. Mm-hmm. When you have a lot of money, usually it makes them stupid and they spend it in ridiculous ways. When you don't have any money, you get so much smarter, so much faster. And when I bought my first company that turned into what's now become 7 companies that I've purchased, I bought that one, did well, shut it down early 2000s, started other companies along the way. I assumed $600,000 in debt. There was no cash in the deal. My house was up as collateral and everything else. And the only money we had, I never raised a dime of outside investment, was what we went out and hunted and brought in from a sales standpoint. That was it. Our CapEx budget the first year was $175. We did $360,000 in sales. I think we almost went out of business about 15 times, and I'm not kidding. But I always knew we would figure out a way to make it, and we grew that into a $100 million business, and then had an amazing company come along and make us an offer, and I would have been fine not selling it at all. It made us a great offer, and I love that they've been really good stewards of the company, and now those 500 team members all have jobs either there or in other companies that this conglomerate owns around the world. Like, what a cool journey, right? All of that comes from the struggle, right?
You touched on resiliency. That resiliency and pushing forward is leverage. Yeah. When things, whether it's a new business or a new opportunity, you're always going to have resistance. And you have to be resilient to be able to push forward. And it's so well said. When is a time, like, you're very into your health, like I am as well. How can health create leverage in what you do? You're busy, you're traveling, we all have issues in life. How does health, in your estimation, everything you do to stay healthy, create leverage?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. Emotional energy to me is the scarcest commodity on the planet. Mm-hmm. I'd rather live only half as long if my emotional energy was on 9 or 10 on a scale from 1 to 10, as opposed to twice as long on 1 or 2. It would be so much more fulfilling, right? So if we don't have our health, it's kind of hard to keep that up. But for me, all I think about, and this last year's been a pretty challenging year for the last 12 months for me, health-wise, I just have to keep moving physically, emotionally, and mentally, no matter what. And I'm thankful for all the lessons that taught me in the last year, going through it. I love to play guitar. We're in my studio. There's 50 plus guitars hanging around here. I've played so long I don't remember not knowing how to play, but my hands were so swollen last year I couldn't even close them more than this. And I'm thinking, okay, well, my identity is not a guitar player. It's not a business guy. It's none of that stuff. My identity, my purpose is creating holistic value and pushing this concept of holistic value creation out into the world. And where my brain went, and I just had to laugh through all of this stuff because it's not good going the other direction. I've got a lot of guitar player friends, and I could have some sort of contest, for who gets which guitar and where it goes. And I'm just going to start writing more books, and my identity isn't guitar playing, it's creating value. And there's so many ways that I can do that. And the emotional energy piece of it is the most important piece. I think if you look at material, emotional energy, and spiritual, I'm probably best at the emotional energy piece, which supercharges the other two.
As Lee mentioned, your identity is not about being a CEO or identified as a leader or even a father. You define your identity by serving others. So I want you to ask this one question to yourself. How do I add value to the world? When is taking leverage too far?
Taking leverage too far, in my opinion, is when you apply it in a win-lose way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So explain to everyone what would be the example of that, if you can kind of go a little bit deeper.
Well, it could be a friend you loaned money to, and or a bank or whatever, and all the assets are tied up around it. You're in real estate, you get this, and they're going through some challenging times, and it looks like they can get through it. You believe they can get through it. However, the contract says you can leverage taking everything from them, so you do it. That's win-lose.
Instead of preserving the relationship and saying, let's work around this so you could actually pay off the loan I gave you and continue to move forward so that person can thrive in life, and not taking advantage of them and taking over maybe some of their assets.
I mean, if they're fully going into bankruptcy and
Right.
everything's crashing and it's going, okay,
Right.
I'm going to work with you. This happens. Let's come up with the best outcome for all of us.
Right.
You made an agreement with us and we loaned you this and we have all this collateral, but we want to come out the other side in the right way. So how do we really do that? As opposed to, we're just going to get everything we can because we can. Because who knows what the next thing that person does, or what friends they have and where it goes.
Exactly.
So apply leverage in a win-win way every single time, and you can sustain that for the rest of your life. You can grow it for the rest of your life with people, and I love that. I mean, that's been my philosophy all the way along. I don't totally know where this came from, but it's been with me since probably a teenager. And it exposes me to so many cool things out there in the world that I can choose to be part of it or not. And same thing in business.
That's a great point. Lee, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for having us.
Ben, it's been a privilege.
It's time to jump out of your comfort zone and start using leverage you have right in front of you. Are you ready to put in the hard work? If you said yes, then what are you waiting for? Let's go out there and own it together.